Can I get you of your sign, please?
Absolutely.
Here's another extra.
Oh,
Thank you.
You're gonna give me the go ahead, right, Stace, whenever you're ready?
Yeah, we're just getting all the recording
Almost there.
Yeah.
set up.
I was a little disappointed, yeah.
Okay, right.
I just I put your name there as well, so.
Well, thank you. Fancy, huh?
Just put theirs in, okay.
That's fine, thank you. We'll be all set.
You're ready? I'm ready.
Okay, I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Broome County Industrial Development Agency of March 16th, 2022. And looking for a motion to approve the transcript of the February 16th, 2022 board meeting.
I reviewed the transcript. I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second?
Jim,
Jim, thank you. Any discussion? We'll have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Come to the part of our agenda where we have a public comment session. Anybody wishing to speak on any matter concerning the Broome County IDA, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Would anybody like to speak at this meeting of ours? I see no hands up. Moving onward, thank you. Executive Director's Report. Stacy?
We have a full agenda, so I'll keep this brief, but good afternoon to everyone. Just a few things I wanted to comment on. Some good news. On March 3rd, I was able to participate and attend the groundbreaking celebration for the Victory Lofts project, a project we've supported with Paulus Development. It was a great, cold but great. The building's not yet heated, as you can imagine. It was cold, but it was a great turnout and a lot of excitement around this project. So they are beginning in earnest now. You could probably see if you drive by windows, their windows being removed and hopefully new ones added soon. A couple things real quickly from the most recent EDC, the State's Economic Development Council conference that staff attended. We attended towards the end of February. A few things of note. There is proposals in both the executive, actually in the executive, the Assembly and the Senate budget proposals currently to develop a shovel-ready site program, which is something we've been advocating for many years, that we really need more assistance on actually getting sites ready so that we can attract businesses rather than waiting for businesses to come and making them wait years to get shovel-ready sites developed. So they're not all in sync. I believe the executive budget has 200 million in the program, and I think the Senate and Assembly are recommending something along the lines of 500 million, which we would certainly support. That program we do expect will be passed in some shape or form. It will be managed, I believe, through Empire State Development Strategic Business Office. And I've already made some overtures to them saying we would like to be a participant in that. So we're hopeful that will move forward. And then just one other item with regard to some information from the conference. Natalie, I think, sent out a week or two ago, new language that we've added to our application with regard to prevailing wage. That is language that was recommended to us by Harris Beach. They did a session on prevailing wage. Essentially, what they're recommending is that we notice developers through the process of our application that they must do the appropriate aggregation of costs to determine if the job meets the proposed threshold of 30% of public financing included in the project that would kick in a prevailing wage. We have been advised not to provide guidance per se, but just to notice that that should be a determination with with the developer and their financial team. So we have added that language to our application. As soon as we hear more and as we continue to learn more on that new legislation, we will keep the board apprised. And then lastly, we've just completed our annual report to meet our March 31 Paris deadlines. I'm happy to report that in 2021, we did, and I don't know that this includes our bonds, so I would probably add a little more to that, a total of $175,279,000 in new investments. Of that, new tax revenue totaled $38,186,000. The projects we supported created a net new 46 net new jobs and 8 retained jobs. They totaled about 1.2 million in new payroll. On the construction side, the projects we supported in 2021 created 589 construction jobs with $32 million payroll. So that report will be submitted, it will be sent out to the board, and we'll issue that to the community. And we are planning to bring back our annual community breakfast sometime in mid-May or early June. So more details on that. That's all I have.
Thank you, Stacy. Any questions for Stacy?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question. Stacy, you sent out a thing, a notice about, we had some freedom of information requests. What's the status of those?
The status, we have 3 currently. One is with regard to termination of a pilot at 2 Court Street in the city of Binghamton. That pilot had 2 years left on it. The owner did make the determination to go back on the tax rolls with the city. They did negotiate a reduced assessment due to it's an occupancy, it's a landlord tenant building. They had a reduced occupancy, most likely due to COVID. So we are aggregating all the documents, and Joe, sent to Joe. We're just doing final review, and we'll issue that information to the gentleman that made that request. We do have one on variances for labor that we approved for the Paulus development for the Victory Lofts, which we're aggregating that information, getting that out. And most recently, we just received one on the wind project with regard to just all of our.
The pilot agreement, they just want us to.
Just the pilot agreement on the wind project. So we are compiling and doing all of our proper notice and getting those materials sent out.
The one on the waivers, they just want a copy of the waivers, right?
Yes.
So that-
yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
something that should be pretty quick to be. Have
Yeah,
have they got that information yet or no? On the waiver?
I don't.
We just
did our
we just did a
5-day.
final, put it all together and did a final review. So that will go out before the end of the week.
Okay. On another note, because I believe I've had some calls on this waiver for the Paulus development. And I just think, probably for all of us going forward, if there's waivers that are submitted, if you could include those in our packet, so we can actually see them when we vote to accept them, I think that would be easier for us too, because I really can't comment on it because I don't know what the actual waiver said. So I think just going forward, if you can include them in our packet, if there are future waivers, that would be beneficial.
You can do that, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Stacy on her director's report?
I have one, Stacy, on the prevailing wage thing, will the IDA be required to collect certified payrolls?
That is not my understanding, no. That's all on the development, the developers.
And who would he submit them to?
Well, they have to do their reporting to us on an annual basis to Paris, which includes all of their labor verification forms that go to New York State. So the developer reports to us, we report to Paris, but we do not, we don't go on site or verify in any way.
So somebody they should be able to.
The GC would have.
Yeah.
The GC.
Yes, they would be responsible. And
Yeah. So that's part of our annual Paris reporting is all the employment verification. I don't know the formal number of the form.
New York State 45.
There you go. I knew Teresa would know that one. And then that goes to our state reporting, our Paris reporting, which is due at the end of this month. So.
Thank you.
But right now, we are just getting numbers on construction, so I think we would have to add that to our letter at the end of the year. Perhaps, because we're just
perhaps we'll
asking
take
for
a
the
look.
New York State 45 is actually for the applicant themselves,
Mhm.
and the construction part just asked for the numbers, so we probably should just add to that letter
Mhm.
for the prevailing wage part.
We'll get more formal information as it progresses and as they put the committee together. So we should certainly know more in the next upcoming
Oh, I
months.
know
So,
everything that comes
Yeah.
from the state.
it's-
is-
Yeah, so it's just so, we're doing our due diligence right now, including the information we have right now.
And that's
so.
what we were recommended, notice, don't
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
offer guidance, we're not attorneys, don't, yeah, but, and just so you know, they are still having conversations about what constitutes those costs in the
Oh, yeah.
30%. Is it
Yeah.
soft
Yeah.
costs, is it not soft costs, is it hard, so there's a lot that's still yet to be decided, but, yeah. That's it.
They better move theirs out to June and July. They want that information.
Any other questions from Stacy? Regarding the internal financial report, any questions for Stacy on that? Budget, cash. I have a question. I see we have 3.2 million in the money market account. I'm gonna direct this to you, Dan. And I know we've sort of set aside in our minds funds for a new park.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably why these funds are in there. My question is, and we have our investment people here,
Perfect timing.
perfect timing. Can we find something that might pay us a slight bit more? Because I can't imagine us spending that 3 million in the next 6 weeks or quite frankly, 6 months. So just a thought.
Okay, we can talk to Brad on
Sure.
best uses for that or holding spots for that until we need it.
Any other comments or questions regarding the financial reports? Okay, moving on to loan activity reports. Any questions with respect to those?
I have a few comments.
Not yet.
I just got my normal question, John, on Mountain Dairy there.
Joe, that's why there was a
Joe.
pause there. I knew that was coming.
Sorry.
Not at all.
Here's where we are. On Monday, I received a call from the judge's office. I'm trying to think, Judge Bonin, and they said that they had reviewed all our documents and they were submitting the order to the judge for signature. That said, I haven't gotten it yet.
Okay.
But it seems to be making
Making
progress.
its way, and sometimes, however, when you call a judge and say, where's my order? That tends to slow things up. as opposed to
Be careful what you ask for, right?
Right.
So
So, but I
Rancho Close-
expect it right along, and once we get that order, we're entitled to schedule the sale and advertise it for the sale.
Okay, thank you.
And then the question, I have one question on Alice's Closet, jump to litigation.
It did.
Can you-
Yep, that was one of my notes for you.
Thank you.
So Alice's Closet was one of the emergency loans we did last year.
Right.
We did give them a year, no payments, no interest. So when that year was up, we had reached out, we did all our due diligence on our end to contact Alice's Closet and to no avail. There's no communication. So we have now forwarded on to Joe for litigation.
And I checked that business out on the internet and it's listed as closed.
So we're in the process of trying to find, I do want to point out though, of these 21 loans, I think this was the only one. It was for $25,000. So it was on the lesser end. So although, we don't want to see any go to litigation,
We had to expect
Yeah, we
that
did
during,
expect.
because of COVID, some businesses may not survive, but we are doing all of our due diligence on our end
That's
to.
fine.
to-
Just to jump.
It did, yeah,
litigation kinda
yeah, because we
quick.
kept giving them, doing our, trying to
We
get
tried to
contact
find
in
it.
any way,
Understood.
shape or form we could, yeah, so. But on a positive note, Grow Hemp is now paid in full, so we were able to take that $41,000 and put it back into the VRE fund.
Beautiful.
So we have available to lend. So let's end it on a positive note.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Moving onward, new business. We have friends here, investment friends that are gonna talk to us about our portfolio, correct?
Certainly. Thanks again for having us here. I know that there's a few new faces, especially on the call there, and we thought we wanted to do was just to give the group a brief overview of the relationship that we have for the agency at NBT Bank. Just a quick highlight of how that's structured and how we work with the investment account and what we call the transition account. And then also give you a brief summary of what's been going on over the past year or so with interest rates and where we see things going over the next 12 months or so. There's obviously a lot going on in the news, specifically with regard to inflation and what's going on over in Ukraine, and that's having a dramatic impact, we believe, going forward on the interest rate environment. For those who are on the call virtually, after we get back to the office, I'll be glad to send over an electronic copy of the presentation we're working through so that everybody can have a copy to look at. I won't be spending a lot of time specifically going through this page by page, but really just highlighting a few of the major important points. So the relationship is broken down into two accounts. One is called the investment account, which is a laddered portfolio of U.S. Treasury securities. Our maximum maturity guideline is 5 years. But given the way that interest rates have moved since the beginning of the pandemic, the average maturity is actually much shorter. It's only about 1.25 years right now. And that's purely reflective of the fact that when the Fed acted to lower interest rates back almost 2 years ago, and they brought interest rates down to zero or essentially zero, the yield curve flattened, which means that there was virtually no difference between the yield of say a 3-month treasury bill and a 30-year treasury. So really that yield curve collapsed and it really did not make sense and actually presented additional risk by going out further on the maturity ladders. We kept maturities very short. We do see that changing a little bit going forward, and I'll talk about that as we move through this. So as of the end of February, the balance of that investment account was a little over $7.3 million. And again, currently it's consisting of U.S. Treasuries. We do have the ability to use some CDs, but back at the beginning of the pandemic, when the Fed lowered rates, the CD market virtually dried up, and those that are available are of more questionable quality. So we have not used CDs in more than a few years. The second account that is part of this relationship was what we call the transition account. The transition account is where we use to collect any of the dividends and the interest that come into the investment account. So on a daily basis, anytime there's interest that gets paid on any of the treasuries, that money goes into the investment account and is swept that night into the transition account. The reason for that is that the state restricts the investments for the agency and does not allow the holding of uninvested cash or money market within the investment portfolios. So what we do is we have a DDA account set up on the commercial side of the bank, where as those interest payments come in, we sweep those over automatically. And then when we have maturities of any of those treasuries, again, they're collected initially in the investment account, they're swept over to that transition account, and then we move them back when we reinvest. So it's really just a very short-term holding account. As of the end of February, the balance on that transition account was just over $11,000. And typically what we do is when we have a new maturity coming in, we'll tack on some of those additional amounts when we make our new purchase. So my expectation is the next time we had a treasury coming due, we would take that $11,000 that's there additionally. And if there's no need for those funds, we would just tack that on to the next purchase. So again, the two accounts that represent the entire relationship. At the present time, if we look forward on a 12-month basis, the estimated annual income for the investment account is about $62,000. So that's a yield of about 0.85%. Now, by comparison, just prior to the beginning of the pandemic, the annualized income was roughly $153,000. So you can see that we're down about $90,000 from the beginning of the pandemic. That yield was about 2.1% at that point in time. And again, it's just purely a reflection of having these treasuries that are rolling off and not having suitable investment alternatives. So for example, as we've been buying treasuries as replacement securities over the past couple of years, Even a year ago, we were buying treasuries, shorter term treasuries, which were only yielding, say, 6 basis points or 13 basis points. So nothing anywhere near that average yield of over 2%, which we were experiencing for a while. And again, we do expect the interest rate environment will be changing. So again, what we've done is we've kept it very short term. Our average maturity and our average duration have been shortened up considerably over the past year. What we see going forward, beginning this afternoon, we would expect that the Fed will announce a 25 basis point increase to the Fed funds rate. So again, that's the overnight borrowing rate at 25 basis points. Over the past couple of months, we've seen that yield curve, which had been very flat. We've seen that steepening, especially in the short term. So between, say, an overnight funds and a 2.5 to 3 year treasury, that yield curve has gotten quite steep. And what that does is it allows us to essentially capture higher yielding securities, yet maintaining a relatively short duration. Once you go out beyond 2 to 3 years, the yield curve is still very flat. That may change, but we do expect to see some changes as the Fed continues to raise rates going forward. As of the time that I put this report together, the consensus in the market was that the Fed would be looking at 4 25 basis point increases in 2022. As of this morning, the consensus has changed, and it's looking at the average right now is about 3.7 increases. So figure 3 to 4 increases between now and the end of the year, with up to as many as 6 or 7 over the next year and a half. This is in response to everything that's going on, certainly with the economy. Inflation has been an issue for the past 6 months to a year. More recently, with the invasion of Ukraine, that's led many to believe that the economy will be cooling down. So you've got the Fed, who is intervening and raising rates to try to tamper down inflation, which has been running a bit rampant or higher than has been expected. The economy has been running quite hot, but it is expected that, especially with rising energy costs and rising just the inflation effects, but especially as it's impacted by the invasion of Ukraine, that could cause the Fed to go the other direction. So we do expect the Fed will raise, and we'll announce that this afternoon for the month of March. But really, anything goes as far as we know. The general direction will be upward. We just don't know how many increases that the Fed will be installing over the next year and a half. But either way, the benefit is with short maturities that we're experiencing right now, we'll have the ability to continue laddering out into a higher rate environment over the next year and a half. So that's positive. As of this morning, as we think about interest rates, there's been some concerns about a recession in 2023 or 2024. This morning, we saw the yield curve invert, which actually means that the yield on right now is the yield on the 7-year treasury is higher than that of the 10-year treasury. Generally, when the market and the yield curve inverts, it's an indication that there's a recession somewhere on the horizon. So we don't believe that that'll be the case in 2022, but we do believe 2023, we may see a recession just due to many of the events that are taking place right now. So that then might prompt the Fed to move the other way with regard to their Fed policy. So it's going to be a very volatile, I think, interest rate environment over the next year and a half to 2 years. We're seeing the same thing in the stock market. But we'll just try to keep the duration of the portfolio short, which allows us to be a little bit more nimble as we reinvest going forward. We do have maturities coming due just about every month for the next 18 to 24 months. And that does allow us to move fairly quickly. Each time we get a maturity, we can reinvest into, probably by tomorrow, if we're looking at reinvesting into a shorter term treasury, we'll get somewhere in that 1.5% range. So things are improving from an investment standpoint. But again, I do expect we're going to see continued volatility for quite some time.
Excellent overview. Questions for Brad? Comments? Thank you. Appreciate it. Welcome to stay.
You're welcome.
We'll be here for a while. I assure you.
We've got audit coming.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Good thinking, Brad.
Thanks.
We'll be having dinner with us later.
All right. Take care.
You can send a copy of these and I'll send them out to the board.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, item number 7 on our agenda, resolution approving the 2021 audit of the Broome County Industrial Development Agency conducted by Insero and Company CPAs LLP. Who am I handing this off to?
Well, you can hand it off to me briefly and then I'll hand it off to either Leslie or Evan. I do want to note this typically goes through audit finance. We had some quorum issues, so we are doing this directly through the board, to the board, so we have no recommendations. You do have, I think, executive summaries in your packet. We can provide hard copies or any kind of electronic copies of the full documents here as well. And what's that?
It went out.
They did. Oh, sorry. Teresa's way ahead. I believe Teresa did send those out. So in a moment, I'll turn this over to Leslie. I'd like to congratulate Leslie on, can I announce that you will soon be retiring?
Yep.
So congratulations. We have enjoyed very much working with you. And Evan, I'm going to get this wrong. You are now becoming the managing partner?
Principal.
Principal. Thank you.
Principal.
Principal, he is at, so, yes, and we have had a great working relationship within Sarah, and Teresa has done a terrific job as always. So with that, I'll turn over to you guys.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Stacy. We also have Rita King is our audit supervisor. She's here too. The nice thing about Zoom is that we can have more people at the meetings. I want to get into the audit results. I do want to thank Teresa and Stacy and everyone at the agency for their help during the audit. It went very smoothly, as it always does. They're great about getting us the information that we need. So very much appreciative of that. And also I want to congratulate all of you on another year of great audit results. A very good audit again this year. So I think you can feel really good about that as well. Evan, if you want to share your screen.
I think Stacy needs to give me
Okay.
access to be able to do that.
He's on it.
Should be out there.
Okay, and can everybody know when they can see this?
Now, as we go through this, should we go through it once for the IDA and then wait until the LDC meeting and then go through the LDC results?
We can do it just once here and then vote, and you should vote to approve.
We will go through both of them at this meeting, and then when we get to the LDC meeting, that's when we'll vote
Okay,
on hopeful acceptance.
okay, great. All right, so what Evan's showing you here is the executive summary, which I believe you all have. So this first page of the executive summary just goes through all the reports that we issue for both organizations. So for both organizations, we've given you an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that you can get. And basically what that says, our opinion says, is that we believe that the financial statements of both agencies are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that, as I said, is the highest level of assurance you can get on a financial statement audit. Now, also, we issue one report that is called our Report on Internal Control over Financial Reporting and Compliance, based on an audit of the financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards, which we do for both organizations. Even though the LDC is not a government per se, it's still falling under the government accounting and the auditing standards. And government auditing standards just requires us to do a little bit more work than we would say for a commercial entity on compliance issues, which for your organizations have to do with the PAAA in particular, compliance with that. And also we need to do a little bit more work as far as internal control over financial reporting. So as I said, you had another great year. So we had no instances of non-compliance and no internal control weaknesses that we need to report. And that is for both organizations, of course, being managed by the same group of people. We also have a letter that we issue for both called the communication with those charged with governance at the conclusion of the audit. We send a letter to you at the planning stage of the audit, and this was the one at the conclusion of the audit. And Evan, it might be good if you could pull that one up as well. Is this the IDA? Yeah, this is the IDA. So we'll go over this letter and I'll just talk about the LDC, you know, as applicable, because they're basically the same letter with some minor differences. So the first topic here talks about significant audit matters. So nothing changed during this year. We had no new accounting pronouncements that we had to implement. There were new changes with accounting policies. We don't have any issues with your accounting or, you know, what you, how you report it. And that we believe that all the significant transactions have been recognized in the financial statements in the proper period. It goes on to talk about accounting estimates. So for the IDA, there are some accounting estimates in the financial statements. And we talk about accounting estimates here because accounting estimates can be, can have a, as it says, it's an estimate. So there can be a lot of management judgment when it comes to making those estimates. So for instance, depreciation expense on your fixed assets are based on the useful life of the fixed assets, which is an estimate of how long those assets will last. And then the fair value measurements for investments, which for you pretty much just comes right off of the statements that we get. So if you want to go down, Evan. And then this next section talks about financial statement disclosures. Oh, let me back up. So for estimates, we didn't have any sensitive estimates for the LDC, so just the IDA. And for financial statement disclosures, we highlight some more of the important balances in the financial statements, and that has to do with investments. So in the financial statements, there's more information giving in the disclosures on investments, on loans receivable, notes receivable, as well as capital assets. And then this refers you to those notes, which Evan will go over when he goes through all the financial information. There were no difficulties in performing the audit, and corrected and uncorrected misstatements. The only real adjustments that we have to do with some closing entries, which we don't consider it a misstatement. We consider it really part of our non-audit services to provide a little additional accounting support for you. So we didn't have any issues with what was recorded. We just needed to do some closing entries. No disagreements with management representations. We will get a letter that Stacy will sign for both organizations that basically says that we have everything that we need to render an opinion on the financial statements. There aren't any lawsuits or anything like that where we might have to accrue you know, a liability or something like that. So basically just that we have everything that we need. And as far as other audit findings are issued, nothing came to our attention that we need to report. And then under other matters, just talks about our responsibility with information that is supplementary to the basic financial information. So in the financial statements, there's the management's discussion and analysis, which is considered required supplementary information. It's required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And we don't really audit that information. We look at it and make sure that it makes sense in relationship to the financial statements. And then there's also what's considered supplementary information. This is actually required by New York State, but it's not required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. So that's why it's not considered required. But we do have the scheduled projects in the IDA, and then we have the schedule of indebtedness in the LDC. And we do audit this in relation to our audit of the financial statements themselves. And then finally, we have our restriction on use, which it is restricted to the board, the finance committee, and management of the agency. And you can go back to the executive summary, Evan. And then we have management comment letters for both agencies. And they say the same thing for both. So there's no internal control issues that we report here. So, you know, if we had internal control matter or issues that rose to a significant deficiency or material weakness, we'd actually have that in the audit report itself. And then sometimes we might have control issues that don't rise to that level that we would put in a management comment letter. But fortunately, we had nothing like that. So the only thing that the comment letters talk about are the impact of future accounting standards that are coming up. And of the ones that we list here, really it's the leases that will have an impact on you. So if you're familiar with some commercial, if you're involved with commercial entities that are implementing a similar standard in the commercial world on leases, you might be familiar with this because it's really mimicking the same thing that's being done on the commercial side. And that is when you have an operating lease that's 12 months or more. It never used to go on the balance sheet in prior years, but with the implementation of this new standard, any of those operating leases will be showing up on the balance sheet, whether you're the lessee or the lessor. So in your case, you're leasing out your parts of your building. So we will have to look at that and see whether it's material and whether we need to report it. So things like copier leases pretty much are not material. So we don't really have to worry about those so much, but it's those other type of leases that we really need to take a look at this next year. So that is all that is in the comment letters. So again, congratulations on a great audit. And with that, I will turn it over to Evan to go over the financial information.
Thanks. So skipping forward in the executive summary, we have the 5-year financial statement analysis focused on the IDA and the LDC, and we'll start with the statements of financial position for both entities. So as you see at the end of the year for December 31st, 2021, the IDA had $24.6 million in total assets. So this is a slight reduction, about $280,000 from the previous year. Your cash is up significantly. Is mostly a result of a reduction in your mortgage receivables. So you received the entire lump sum of the 265 Industrial Park Drive's mortgage. And then there were slight reductions in loans and notes receivable due to payments on them in excess of new loans and notes. Your accounts payable and accrued expenses were minimal at $36,300, just based on timing of when you receive invoices near year end. For services that have been rendered. Total net position was $24.6 million, and that was down slightly, about $280,000, just due to excess expenses over revenues. Your net investment in capital assets essentially represents what you purchased for your capital assets net. Your building offset by depreciation, and your loans or your STEED and BDF loan funds, you're unrestricted as the residual amounts of your revenues and expenses close out to. Total assets for the local development corp were $744,000, and that was up about $248,000 from the previous year. Most of that is related to revenues over expenses of about $255,000. We'll get into that on the subsequent pages. And your net position was $740,000, up about $255,000. Again, your revenues over expenses, and then unearned revenue and accounts payable minimal $3,400 relates to timing of invoices near year end. Any questions on the statement of net position before I skip forward to the revenues and expenses?
Keep going.
Okay. So this next page is the statement of your statements of activities for both the IDA and LDC. So your total revenues for the IDA were 1.1 million. So it's up from $560,000 a year before. A lot of that relates to your gain and loss on sale of assets. You see the last 2 years, you had some pretty large losses on sale of assets. That was related to the sale of 30 Charles Street. There's slight increases in fee income, a little more activity this year than in previous years. Your grant income decreased slightly. So one-time Steed grant, about $168,000. And also your loan interest income is up significantly. It's related to the mortgage payment on 265 Industrial Park Drive. So all the principal and interest is paid. So that's why there's such a large increase in that line item. And your expenses were 1.4 million, up about $12,000 from the previous year. So quite consistent results from current to prior year. A few differences: your grant expense went from $100,000 to zero. So that's related to the Steed ARC grant. So you received the revenue and you spent it last year. And then also within other expenses, those increased slightly, mostly related to a few tax expenses related to the Link building. All that resulted in a change in net position of $287,000 for the IDA. As for the local development corp, total revenues were $450,000, up slightly from, or down slightly, sorry, up, I was correct with the first one, up slightly from the previous year. Slight reduction in fee revenue, just fewer projects than previous years. Other income is up significantly, and this mostly relates to reporting of in-kind revenues and expenses. So on the local development corp side, there's zero payroll and benefits associated with any of the workers for the IDA. So through some conversations with Stacy and Teresa, we decided to report in-kind revenue and expense for the services rendered by the IDA for the local development corp. And so that's a revenue and expense of $100,345. You see the expenses split out at the bottom of the expenses section. Total expenses were $201,000, and that increase is mostly due to your in-kind expense reportings, offset by reduction in sponsorship expenses, which is your marketing and advertising. All that resulted in a positive change in that position for the local development corp of $255,000. Any questions on the revenues or expenses before I skip forward to the cash flows? Take that as a no. So this is your 5-year cash flow analysis. So shows your cash flows from your operating activities, net cash used $468,000, what you received from providing services, what your payments are for your salaries and your contractual expenses. Your non-capital financing received $5,000 from the county on one of your receivables. Cash flows from capital, not a whole lot of activity related to that, just some minimal purchases of capital assets. And then we have a lot of activity in the investing section. Some principal payments on loans and notes, $144,000, $347,000 was offset by new loans that have been issued, $215,000. And then this was your very large mortgage payment that was received from 265 Industrial Park Drive. Had some purchases and sales of investments, mostly US Treasury notes, and then your interest income of $252,000, which mostly relates to the 265 Industrial Park Drive, and your rental income for all the various entities that rent on the first floor of your building. All of that resulted in a positive increase in cash and cash equivalents, about 3.3 million, ending the year at 4.5 million. And then the bottom is just a reconciliation from your statements of revenues and expenses, operating income or loss, to what's shown above in your used by operating activities. Backs out any non-cash transactions, activities such as your depreciation, and shows changes in your receivables and payables. Any questions on the cash flows before I dive into the financial report?
That's so good.
Awesome. Way at the back. Okay, so financial report, we start with the independent auditors report. So we adopted some new statements on auditing standards this year, which changed around how the independent auditors report looks. So right in the beginning, it tells you the opinion, pretty much what everybody wants to know right away. The unmodified opinion on the financial statements for the Broome IDA discusses the basis for opinion, how we arrive at that, responsibilities for management. This is unchanged from previous years. And then it dives into the auditor's responsibilities for the financial statements, which this expands on significantly from previous audit reports. Describes how we essentially arrive at or what our responsibilities are for the audit of the financial statements and certain things that we do specifically related to the audit. And then describes the required supplementary information that Leslie discussed, the management's discussion and analysis, that we evaluate it and don't express an opinion on it, as well as the supplementary information, which is the schedule of projects. We do opine on that, and that it appears fairly stated in comparison to the basic financial statements. The final paragraph is a pointer paragraph to the back of the report. So it's the report on internal control or financial reporting that we had no issues related to, and we'll get to at the end. The next part is the management's discussion and analysis. Essentially goes through everything that I just went over through the executive summary, significant financial highlights, describes the financial statements themselves, and describes or details the financial statements themselves in the MD&A, and describes why things changed, which we just went over. And this is for the statement of net position, the changes in net position, capital assets, and then if the entity had any debt, which the IDA does not. And then finally dives into factors bearing on the future, things that are coming up that management might want to make financial statement users aware of. And then jumps into the statements. I'll skip through these because we just went through them on the executive summary. Note 1 describes the summary of significant accounting policies, how you account for cash, investments, receivables, loans, capital assets. All this remains unchanged from the previous year. Note 2 describes your cash and cash equivalents. You're required to have assets collateralized at FDIC insured banks. Their total bank balances are 4.6 million, collateralized by FDIC insurance and additional deposits with the financial institutions. Note 4 describes your investments. You had a little over $7 million in US Treasury notes at the end of 21. And note 5 describes your loans receivable, where your activity was. You had new loans of 215,000, loan payments of 347,000. And we break out what's expected to be received next year in 2022, which is $347,000 and ends with a non-current expected beyond 1 year. Note 6 is your property held for resale. Still had a little over $2 million held for resale, no change from the previous year. Notes receivable, you had your ADEX Solutions and Canopy growth of $953,000, plus what's expected to be received within 1 year, $145,000. Mortgages receivable, still have your Requiem Holdings LLC, $65,000. So last year you had your $3.1 million of the 265 Industrial Park Drive. So that payment came in and that knocked off of this footnote as it's not outstanding at the end of the year. And then you have $75,000 due from the county, payable in $5,000 increments over the next 20 years. And then note regarding your due from Binghamton Local Development Corp. So this relates to the sale of 30 Charles Street, where the IDA will not receive the complete payment until the land is sold by the Local Development Corp, which is unknown at this time still. Note 11 jumps into your capital assets. You had $12,000 in additions, offset by $138,000 in depreciation, ending the year with $6.8 million in capital assets. Note 12 is commitments and contingencies, just describes that you're exposed to various risks of theft, loss, and damage, and no claims have exceeded your commercial insurance, and that you receive grants that are subject to auditing by federal and state agencies, that they could result in disallowances, but you don't believe any would exist that would be material. Note 13 describes your tax abatements. This is derived from your scheduled projects that is in the back of the financial reporting packet. They received $7.5 million in pilot payments compared to 13.8 had no pilots existed, with total abatements of 6.3 million. And then in addition, you had 5 million in sales tax abatements, 2.3 million in mortgage tax. So the total abatements were 13.6 million. Leases, so the IDA leases space on the first floor, and 2022 is the last year expected of all those leases. So we disclose the future rental payments that are expected. And this is the section that will be affected by the new lease standard specifically that Leslie discussed. Note 15 describes related party transactions with Local Development Corp. And 16 is carry forward regarding just the economic uncertainty related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And then we dive into your schedule of projects with the total numbers that we just discussed within the footnote. And finally, this is the other report on internal control and financial reporting. Just describes a few definitions of what deficiencies in internal control would be, and then dives into that we had no findings in the purpose of the report. So are there any questions on the footnotes for the IDA or the financial report? Anything that I just went over? No, it's a lot.
I think so. So you can keep going, Evan. You just have to do the LDC, right?
Okay, and then do you want me to do that now or until you transition?
Yeah, we'll just do that now and then we'll do a vote after
Okay,
that.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
So I've got that one queued up already.
There you go.
So the LDC report, independent auditors report, essentially same exact thing as the IDA, unmodified opinion, as Leslie mentioned, and the exact same verbiage as the IDA report, except we have the schedule of indebtedness here rather than the schedule of projects, and that it appeared fairly stated in relationship to the financial statements. And then the management's discussion and analysis, similar to the IDA, and that we just went over through the executive summary of all the changes from current to prior year and reasons why. And then the statements that we went over through the executive summary. Except we did not have the Local Development Corp cash flow statement within the executive summary. So I'll just touch on this real quick. Had net cash provided by operating activities, $248,000, and there were no investing or financing activities, which resulted in almost $670,000 in total cash for the Local Development Corp. Notes to the financial statements, again, describe your significant accounting policies. There were no changes from the previous year. Similarly to the IDA, Note 2 describes cash and cash equivalents. They had $671,000 in bank balances insured by collateral and FDIC. Note 3 is exactly the same as the IDA regarding commitments and contingencies. Note 4 is your related party transaction footnote, describing the transactions and the dollar value of services received in administrative contributions. Note 5 is exactly the same as the IDA regarding uncertainty. And note 6, we had a few subsequent events for the local development corp. So you guys received $8.5 million from the county in American Rescue Plan funds. And then you approved the purchase of the land of the IBM Country Club. And then from what I heard earlier in the meeting, you approved the sale of it. So we might add another sentence to the end of this related to the subsequent event. And this is your schedule of indebtedness, shows the outstanding bonds that have been issued through the local development corp for BCC Housing Development, Good Shepherd, and UHS, ending the year with $323 million in bonds. And then your independent auditors report on internal control over financial reporting, exactly the same as the IDA, that where there were no compliance findings to report. And that's it for the local development corp. Overall, the audit went very well. A big thank you yet again to Teresa and Stacy. They're just wonderful to work with. Makes our job incredibly easy.
Any
Not too
questions?
easy.
Any questions for our friends? By board members? Thank you very much for the presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Teresa, thank you. I know I've been through a couple of these. Well done.
Hi, can I just say, I will be around for a while. In fact, I'm doing a lot of ARPA work with several of our clients, and I know I've worked with Teresa and Stacy on your ARPA funding. So I will be around to help out with that and future audits. Evan, as I said, is a principal now. A principal functions in our firm like a partner. So Evan will be assuming my role, which he's doing at several of our other IDA clients as well. He's got years and years of experience with working with IDA. So I have every confidence in him that he'll do a great job for you. So it's been my absolute pleasure working with you over these few years, and I really appreciate all that you've done to help with the audit.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right, well, take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
With that in mind, there's looking for a motion or a resolution approving the 2021 audit of the Broome County Industrial Development Agency as conducted by Insero and Company CPAs LLP.
Make the motion.
Dan, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
They're all glazed over.
Moving on to item number 8 on our agenda, resolution approving a $155,000 loan request for JB Leetonen. I'm winging it here with the name Leetonen LLC from the BDF Loan Fund Program as set forth in the commitment letter attached here to as Exhibit A. This did not go through governance, or it did?
It did not.
No, the loans don't.
Natalie, you're on.
Thank you, John. This is a $155,000 loan request from Brenda and John Latonin of Full Lumber to expand its current location with a new showroom and add a second level office conference area. Full Lumber has been in business for 61 years and has been at the same location at 550 Old Front Street in Binghamton, New York since its founding in 1961. Brenda and John Latonin have owned the company for 4 years, while John has remained an employee of Full for 27 years. Fallen Lumber is a full-service wholesale lumber supplier specializing in commercial building materials. The company remained open during the COVID pandemic by supplying contractors with various building products. As a result of its subsequent growth, the company will now be expanding from a wholesale operation to now include retail products and services to private individuals. The company is confident that this expansion will position it for future growth and allow it to remain competitive throughout the pandemic recovery. The advisory loan committee and I recommend approval of this loan for the following reasons. There is adequate cash to cover the debt. All 3 current full-time positions will be retained and 3 new full-time positions will be created. And finally, there are strong corporate and personal guarantees of both principals. I also would like to add, since this was my very first loan, I worked very closely with Tom Gray on the whole process.
I don't know if that's good or bad. No offense to Tom, I don't think he's on this call. Natalie, very, very well done. Are there any questions for Natalie? Is there a motion?
Came forward as a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried. Well done, Natalie.
Thank you.
Item number 9, resolution approving the extension of the March 17th, 2021 sales and use tax exemption agreement with Upstate High Tech Properties LLC from March 17th, 2021 through and including August 31st, 2022, the total of which shall not exceed $84,800. Stacy.
Yeah, so this and the subsequent 2 items are all requests for time, extension of time for the sales tax program. The first being from Dave Jones, managing partner at Upstate High Tech Properties. I think Margaret's still on the call representing the company. The building, as we are continuing to see as a result of COVID, the project started a bit later than planned in the town of Union. They've encountered some speed bumps with building construction and is planning to complete more towards the 2nd or 3rd quarter of this year rather than the 1st as they had previously hoped. Their building contractor Rotella has encountered material delays that include the steel for the building, concrete, and early weather impacts have made it difficult to finish until spring when the ground is hopefully thawed and dry. They are also finalizing all of their processes with getting their power up and running just this past week. They hope to finish by the internal contractors will look to finish at the end of March and then need to set up offices, production floors that can add additional time. So that being said, they had asked for an extension through the end of July or August. We recommend through August 31.
Thank you, Stacy. Are there questions for Stacy or Margaret, who I believe is on this call? Mayor, this come through governance?
Yes, it did. We move it forward as a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dan, thank you. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried.
Abstain.
Thank you, Dan. You just weren't fast enough, Dan. I almost went right past you. Sorry about that. Thank you, Dan. Moving on to item number 10, resolution approving an extension of the May 1st, 2020 sales and use tax exemption agreement with Simulation and Control Technologies, Inc. from April 15th, 2022 through and including April 15th, 2023, of which the total shall not exceed $40,880. Stacy?
Yes, so
you wanna add
again,
anything?
not really, just an extension of time for additional year due to a lot of delays related to COVID. And Mitch Gordon's on the call representing the company.
Thank you, Stacy. Are there questions for Stacy or for Mr. Gordon? Mayor?
Governance moves it forward as a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Joe seconds.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carried. Moving on to item number 11, resolution approving an extension of the June 12th, 2020 sales and use tax exemption agreement with GJS Property Group LLC from May 20th, 2022. Is that right? From May 20, yeah, from May 20th, 2022 through and including May 20th, 2023, of which the total shall not exceed $60,000. Stacy?
Yeah, so similarly, the request for a year extension of the sales tax due to difficulty in scheduling contractors and also long lead times in procuring materials. And George Slavic is on the call.
Thank you. Any questions for Stacy or for George Slavic, who is on the call? Mayor,
Governance moves it forward as a motion to approve.
is there a second? Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions?
Dan,
Dan has abstained. Thank you. The motion is, or the resolution is carried. Item number 12, resolution approving the readoption of the agency's investment and deposit policy, the internal controls and financial accountability policy, the purchasing policy, the property acquisition guidelines, and the property disposition guidelines with no changes. Natalie.
Thank you, John. This is an annual requirement of the authority's budget office that the agency review its financial policies every year, then either make modifications to those policies or recommend that they be reapproved for the following year. The staff has reviewed these policies and recommend that they be accepted going forward with no changes.
Any questions for Natalie? This did not go through governance, or it did?
Did
No,
not.
no, typically it would go through audit finance, yeah.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Dan has made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. Any discussion or questions, comments? Let's have a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried. Item number 13, resolution accepting an application from 4301 Watson Boulevard LLC, the company, for a leaseback transaction to facilitate the financing of the demolition, construction, and equipping of the building located at 4301 Watson Boulevard in the town of Union, Broome County, New York, to provide for a sales and use tax exemption benefit in an amount not to exceed $1,754,866, to provide for a mortgage tax exemption in an amount not to exceed $395,767, to provide for a real property tax exemption in an amount not to exceed $559,922, and authorizing the agency to set and conduct a public hearing with respect thereto. I know this went into governance, and I think it came out of governance. You pushed it back our way, correct, Mayor?
Yes, yeah, we didn't act on it because there were some concerns about the timing of it not being posted within the 24 hours and just I guess, and members had concern about the size of the application being received kind of late in the game. So we felt that we would just throw it to the full board for consideration and see where it goes from there.
Okay. It did hit us yesterday.
It did, yeah,
And-
I
and in
recognize
fair-
that. We
I think
did
in
it.
fairness to everybody, I'm not sure we're prepared to even vote on this. But I am prepared to call for a special meeting because I know there's a time frame. There's a March 31st drop dead date. They have to have documents in hand in order to submit an application. So we can talk about it now
Yeah,
if you want to
now-
describe it.
Yeah, I'm happy to describe and let you know, everything that's provided to you, and we certainly recognize, affording time for due diligence on this. So you have an application from Conifer Realty, who's partnering with LaChase Construction on the redevelopment of the former IBM Country Club. So the project, as I know you've been privy to some description before, but just a refresher. The proposed development will include the demolition of the current structure and construction of a new double-loaded corridor apartment building, including 75 new mixed income affordable apartments for families earning between 30% and 90% of area median income. The 3-story building will include 18 one-bedrooms, 38 two-bedrooms, and 19 three-bedrooms, which is a nice amount of 3 bedrooms for an affordable. Vehicular access will be provided off to Watson Boulevard with parking lots on both ends of the building. The central drive will connect the 2 parking lots and provide a convenient drop-off area for ADA accessibility. And I do believe some units will be set aside for those that require ADA compliance. And I know Michael Berkeley, who's on the call, we did introduce them with Springbrook, and they did have some early conversations about that. The proposed development will be constructed as a wood-framed structure that will hold all 75 apartments, as well as communal amenities such as a fitness center, community room with kitchenette, laundry facilities, outdoor patio, and playground. And there will be on-site management and maintenance shop. You do have in your packet the full and completed application with project renderings and designs. You have a project review form that provides a short summary of the benefits and the costs, the project costs. It's roughly a $40 million project. We're looking at total exemptions of real property and sales and mortgage tax totaling about 2.7 million. They are seeking a 30-year pilot that is commensurate with the mortgage financing requirements. You also have a cost benefit analysis in your packet. And finally, just a reminder of our previous conversation at governance, you have a template for an affordable housing pilot that will be sort of our new standard. And what that does is it determines the pilot at 10% of the sheltered rent. It outlines how we come to calculate that pilot, that base pilot, utilizing the monthly rents times the number of units, then the utilities per unit annually, and then we back those out. That gives us to our sheltered rent. We back the utilities out of the gross revenue, and that's where we start our baseline for the pilot. It is a new structure. As you'll see, we did not assign a specific term. Our thought process is that most, if not all of these are the term of the pilot is determined by the financing instrument. I have spoken with Lenny Skrill at HCR. He likes this project quite a bit, which is a good sign going into their application. So, this will allow a few days to review everything. And our goal is to get them the inducement resolution that they can include in their application by the end of the month.
Questions for Stacy or for the developer, who I believe is on the phone?
Oh, he may have hopped off. He was on governance. And I can also let you know too, that Michael and his team did meet with the town and town officials on the project on March 10th. And they had a very good introductory and productive meeting, and are planning to do some green space in and around the area that would be of benefit to other town residents in the neighborhood as well. So far, all things are moving along well. We have acquired the building officially. We've just secured our insurance and are doing some property maintenance per the town's request. We have also received a condemnation letter recommendation from Delta Engineers, and we'll be meeting with the county and the towns and Delta next week and Conifer LaChase to see if there is a possibility we can get the building down sooner rather than later, but we know there's some other steps in the process. But a lot of moving parts, but everything is moving well.
So I'll ask once again, any questions for Stacy at this stage? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I have a question, Stacy. So does Conifer run this project after, or going forward, the rents, making sure it's maintained?
Yes, Conifer will own and manage the property.
Okay, and they've done this type of stuff before, right? We know that.
Yes, they came very highly regarded in my conversation with with the Homes and Community Renewal Office.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to look to Stacy, Natalie, and the gang here to establish a date for a
Yeah.
special meeting,
So that would
giving
require
everyone
3
ample
days.
time
Yeah.
to look at the documents, come up with your questions so that we can have a productive discussion and move forward with this one way or another, okay?
Mhm.
Moving on to number 14, discussion regarding revised uniform tax exemption policy for the Broome County Industrial Development Agency. Stacy?
Yeah, so I'm happy to see the culmination of a lot of input from the board. Thank you for your input over the course of time on this topic. I do think it was needed, and I do think we have a much stronger policy in place with the changing environment and the changing project environment especially. So I had sent this out previously. There's not a lot of structural changes to the language in this, but I think what it does is it outlines the process in a little more detail. It outlines the required information, financial information, documentation, et cetera. And it outlines our process, I think, more clearly. It does, I think, also outline the process when it comes to a deviation to the standard in such that we will notice the chief elected officer and all supporting taxing jurisdictions. We will not require resolution. However, what's built into this process, I think, is a collaborative approach to developing the pilot schedule at the front end, which I think will address some of the board's concerns. I will note in the back, you have 2 appendices. Appendix A has been reviewed by National Development Council as far as, we ran some calculations through there to make sure the break even and that the benefit does enhance the municipalities involved. And Kevin Grems, who is on the governance, ran numbers and feels very comfortable with these. We did make one slight modification to the industrial improvements, which is just rather than, it was more of a fixed pilot, a fixed abatement. We made that more of a gradual 5% decrease over the period of time. And secondly, we've added Appendix B, which will serve as our standard schedule for affordable housing. So we did, just as a reminder, we did host 2 webinars on February 25th and March 7th. We had in total about a dozen representatives from towns, villages, school districts combined. We had some assessing units as well. Mark Manoia and Joe Cook participated. We also did a meeting with Mayor Cram at his request and his team, and a meeting with Anthony Bates representing the village of Endicott. And so everyone felt comfortable. The area of most need for clarification was that process with deviations. Do they need to get board resolutions? We've said no longer. And they felt actually comfortable with that process. So I think we have a cleaner and more structured process moving forward.
Any questions for Stacy? You've all
Stacy, how-
witnessed the process, excuse me?
Yeah, Stacy, how was that feedback? Was everyone, did they like what they saw and think?
I was expecting some pushback I was expecting pushback on when we said we're really not going to we're not going to require, we never really needed to, however, so I thought there would be pushback from the municipalities on that, but actually, no, they found the process to work well. Of course, as long as they're getting the notification and the input, which is what we've tried to bake in right from the front end of when we're developing the pilot, working with the assessing units, working with the municipalities and the developer collaboratively. And I think to the board's benefit, you guys, what we want to prevent from happening is you seeing a pilot schedule that was, oh, well, the municipality approved it already. So, so we're also on our end cleaning, I think, that process up too.
Good. And one last comment, maybe Appendix A, you could print on a landscape so I could read it.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I will make that, yes.
Yeah, I'll change that.
We'll make that large print. I need that too. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good, thanks.
So just so you know, if assuming approval today, if it gets approved today, we will send this new schedule, both hard copy and electronically, to all relevant taxing jurisdictions in the county. We'll receive notice and copy of this.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments of Stacy? Mayor, governance?
It did go through governance. We move it forward as a motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Dan, thank you. Any additional discussion? Let's have a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you all. Well done. Good work. This was a long time coming.
It was, I agree. And yeah, I don't have any executive
Good,
session.
thank you. I'm
I
looking
don't
for
have
a
any.
motion to adjourn this meeting. There a motion? Joe Barabito, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Excellent. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. We are adjourned and we will move into LDC as